Welcome to WWIII Radio, your show for all things positive. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Kirk Spencer, your host of WWIII Radio. Today we have a very special show because we've been talking about this subject for a little while in our past broadcasts with Chad Meek and Michelle Vaughn, but we've been talking about it from a metaphysical point of view. And today we have our guest, which is Andrés Ginestet, who is as NATO has given him the title, senior expert on systems theory of violence. So Andrés is always working closely with NATO. He's working with other government officials throughout Europe, and he has the inside picture about what's going on in the world today, especially from Europe, and I would even assume from the Middle East, which we'll find out later. But while we're waiting for Andrés to get to call in, I know he's there because we just got through speaking before we pulled up on the show today. I do want to make a little note here that the majority of our programming here on WWIII Radio in the future more than likely will be, as I said, the majority will be about current events and what to expect, how to deal with these things and whatnot. Because you know the subtitle to my show is called Your Show for All Things Positive. So we're bringing up what's going on in the world, but we're also helping or trying to help you to see, not to follow us, but to find your own mark in the world, how to deal with things. And even as Chad Meek put it, he's the astrologer, psychic astrologer, he put it, these events are coming. And he's talking about this from an astrological point of view, which is these events are coming. This is what's going to happen. But it's telling you that you also have, oddly enough, I'm starting to get feedback. At any rate, what you're saying, what your choices are, is that you can. And you can have the ability, you do have the ability to choose which way to go. And in our current world market or current world situations, is do we do this by fight, flight, by or being able to choose which direction that we go into? So without any further ado, Andrés is now on the line, so let me pull him in. And
yes. Hello, Kirk.
I don't know if any of this. Hi there. I've got feedback in my headset, so I'm hearing myself. So I'm not sure if you're actually hearing me or if everybody else is hearing what I'm hearing. So, anyway,
I hope that everybody's hearing me while I'm talking. Kirk, do you hear me?
I hear you, but I'm also hearing myself. I can't understand this. This is weird. I mean, this is something I said a minute ago, so.
Yeah, okay. I am hearing you well, and I don't hear anything else. So Blog Talk Radio has switched off the Firefox listening to the radio, the broadcast, and this means that I'm only on. Kirk, do you hear me?
Hold on a moment. I think it stopped. Yeah. Yes, I hear you. Okay. Anyhow, are you there, Andrés?
I am there. It's 2 minutes 33 of our time that are gone. I hope this works.
I wish I could filter this out. This is ridiculous. I can't figure out who I'm talking to, if I'm talking to you in in a loop, or am I talking to whatever? Anyway, Andreas, while I try to figure this out, let me give this introduction. I'm going to let you run with it, and we'll see if I can figure it out while you're doing the talking.
Okay. Good.
With today's show, and like I said, I'm going to see if I can figure out why I'm hearing feedback on my side. He's not hearing anything, and hopefully you as listeners aren't. Yeah. Anyhow, here we go. We did a show with Chad Meeks and Michelle Vaughn a couple of weeks ago talking about what's coming up with in the world. We see this with stories and theories on economic collapse. We see 4 blood moons coming in a year and a half. This Friday we're having the spring equinox, and we're having what am I trying to say? An eclipse, and I think in a couple of weeks we're supposed to have another blood moon. So with all of this going on, Andres, what do you see on the physical side? Because you're working with NATO, so how can you tell us what's going on with that? And while you're talking, let me see if I can figure out what the problem is here with Blog Talk.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Once again, we are going to talk about crucial issues for everybody on the planet. Because as it seems, really, the conflict is growing every day, and it seems like it is impossible to avoid the issue. And I would like to discuss now some issues with you, because we have to think of this show that is being presented to us through media and political activism as a diversion of what really is going on in the background. We have to know that violence as a system is a very complex system, and this complexity of the system itself needs to be understood. The system right now feels threatened, and it feels very threatened, right, because the work we are doing to stop the system of violence as a regulation system for human complexity, this work is so efficient that there is nothing that the violent system can fear more than having us working on it and going on working on it. And for this very reason, the system of violence needs to do whatever it can to keep alive and to manage to drive us into a major conflict that will divert our attention and that will divert our efforts from the annihilation of the real troublemaker, which is the system of violence, towards other ends. And this is very normal. What we are aiming to do, this radical change of human behavior and radical change of human attitude, is so deep, it's so profound, it's so final, that all the past history of humankind will be really past. It's like we will wake up someday and live on a different planet with different people who are all acting in a different way, and we will not understand how it happened. It will seem like a miracle. But it's not. It's steady work. It's day-to-day work. It's something that is being done by thousands of people. And I am simply designing part of this change in the background, hidden away, doing what I can to make sure it will run and that it will function without interferences from anybody who wishes to keep the system of violence alive. Now, why am I explaining this when there are so many geopolitical games being played at our nose? And why am I pointing at these issues which would maybe seem to the listeners and to the people who are used to a certain type of narrative as completely useless? And this is the very interesting question. What we do is extremely dangerous to those who are putting out the danger. It's the end of their games forever. And this is something they know. And they know it's coming up. And the only thing they can do is drive us back into prehistory to avoid that we manage to set up the progress. So with this regard, there is definitely something we can do about it, but I have to very openly state that we can't do it alone. Those ones who are aware of what is at stake, those ones who are working right now in the background, know that we have to explain a little bit more and get more people to understand what we are doing so that participation is possible and so that the other side will not be able to just go on. And this is not simple. This is not something that is easy said, and it's even less easily done. Kirk, what do you think?
Yes.
What shall we discuss next?
Well, I finally figured out what the problem was over here, so I got rid of the problem. So now I don't have any feedback. I don't have any looping sound. But as far as your question, yeah, it's nice to get rid of that because it was very difficult to hear you in real time and hearing it in recording it or delayed. Anyhow, as far as what you're asking, I think that there is that capability. Now, I'm going to give it to you from my point of view. Now, like I said, this is my point of view. I've had many, for a long time now, I've been asking myself the question of what is, I'm one who believes in prophecy, and I'm not talking about from any particularly specific point of view at this point, but coming from Mayans, coming from the Aztecs, coming from you name the source of any prophecy, from biblical or whatever, it all seems to point us to a rather dim and bleak future. But it seems to be that there always is that part of it, even as one of my friends, Chad Meek, said in one of our previous programs, who's an astrologer. He says, even the heavens tells you what's going to happen, but within that there is left this element of you have the ability to choose which way your future will go. So, yeah, I do believe we have the ability to make changes and make them good if we so choose. But that kind of brings me to a question that I had written down here for you because I wanted to ask some set questions and the rest of it we just kind of go with. But let me ask you, Andrés, in a world full of closed-minded and stubbornly opinionated people, how can we bring positive change?
Okay, that is something that is easy, and not only easy said, but really easy done. I had last Tuesday a meeting with the German Minister of the Interior, Thomas de Maizière. And what I lived through in this personal meeting was something that I have lived through in the past every time I have met personalities out of political life or in the military. And I talk about the highest ranking officers and political leaders of countries. And what I have understood in those times and in those meetings is exactly what I had to understand also in this meeting. First, the person that I'm seeing is informed. She knows everything about me she wants to know. She's in control of the situation because she has read the documents. And she just wants some precisions, which is very good for the conversation because we don't need to talk long. With few words, in fact, and with few explanations, the person that I'm visiting will be satisfied, happy with the explanations, and then what happens is that I get told, Andrés, please go on. We will start this project this and this way. I'm not going to tell what we have agreed on, but for you to know, we have a very precise outcome, and there is some action that is going to happen. And this means that I have managed now to twist tables, to change tables, because for 10 years I had a disagreement with the German government. And the German government didn't want to really take part and be active in the process. And this has turned now. So the German government has officially said, yes, we will do it. And this is decisive. I mean, if you look at how the, let's say, political momentum of the primitive system of violence evolves, then you see that for the system of violence it gets more and more difficult to just be, to just exist, and to just produce situations as it has done in the past. And what we have to see is that still until now, the things that help most and that simply the most efficient and which are also the easiest to do for all of us is to really face the threats, face violence, and decide that we will stop it and do it. So the most important is our intention, is our thought, it is our will. And it's not just saying it, but it's doing it. You know, I'm not getting paid when I go and visit the minister. It's me putting the money. It's me putting the time. It's a whole week of work. And it's not just seeing the minister, but it's seeing policemen, it's seeing other representatives of the government at lower levels. It's seeing, for example, the mayor of a city. So there are very much engagement possibilities that one can take on and which need to be followed up. Next week on Monday and Tuesday I will have 2 meetings with representatives of church who will discuss the issues at stake, for example, for people coming from countries at war. And it's the Catholic Church that is opening the forum for discussion. I'm invited by the priests. They have been at home here this morning, and they have been discussing with me what I will tell and what I will explain. And they're asking me for an intervention because we will have a specialist at the table, and we will also have just a normal average public, so citizens. So in the end, the most important thing, is that we make a decision. And the decision has to be that we do want to face violence and that we want to end violence. And from that moment on, everything else is easier. Yeah? And this really is necessary because, we always get trapped. It's like I was last week in the land of Saxonia where I met the minister. And the politicians who had invited me to do these talks and to have these conversations and meetings didn't tell me all the truth. They just told me the entire truth this morning. And now suddenly I'm facing a completely different situation where I have to face a nightmare of corruption which has existed, which is documented, and I didn't know about it. And they just opened up the box of Pandora so that I can have a small look into it and see what I'm facing. And it's hideous. But it's a long...
Can you tell us a little bit about what they told you?
Oh, yes. I mean, it happens to be that in the land of Saxonia there is a scandal, and it's amazing. It's a huge thing which is going on for many, many years. It's going on since 1997. So it's nearly 20 years ago that it started. And in the late 90s, they found in Saxonia a brothel in which children were prostituted. So it was children aged 13 to 19. That brothel was led by a boxer. And it seems to be, that for at least a decade, nobody looked into who were the clients of this brothel. And 10 years ago, they started looking into the clients of this brothel. And then turned out that the clients, are among the highest ranking justice representatives or politics representatives. So it's a great problem. And, it's like the case has been buried, the entire case. They even tried to make court cases against the victims, so against the children. Children have been prostituted and that have had these clients who were then explaining with whom they had to have sex. So these persons, 15 years later, are being accused of lying. It's amazing. It's completely ridiculous because, first of all, you do not do that to to women who have been abused and prostituted as teenagers and who have suffered and who are traumatized. You do not traumatize them a second time. This is what is called secondary traumatization or secondary victimization in the jargon, in the language of medical doctors. And you simply do not do that. So if a state structure is, trying to use the victims of the case to dismantle the case and to stop any operation that would go after, for example, the clients of this brothel, then you obviously have a strong hint that the system of violence, which is composed of all the actors within this racket and all the actions, so it's very complex, is trying to diminish the impact of those working against it. And I didn't know it. Yeah, so this means that I will start working on these issues and I have to be extremely careful because these people are obviously powerful. Yeah, and they can destroy me, they can destroy my career, they can destroy my home, they can destroy everything. So I will have to work very swiftly. And this is really important. This is what counts. And any scenario of a war, of an upcoming war, is just a diversion of this really serious, really personal issue where you know the names of the people, you know exactly whom you are facing, and where you really have a chance to stop the system of violence to the end.
Okay, with that being said, this is the reason why I was asking you, do you see, or how do you see that we can actually make a change? Because you and I, we've been trading information about this upcoming economic collapse. A lot of people are believing in that, whether it be from conspiracy theory, conspiracy fact, or something that they can prove. People are seeing that the finances are going just downhill, and of course, the people that have the money are not going to be the ones who suffer, at least not as much, at least not financially. Put it that way. We see in the world. I mean, you and I are both on Facebook. I don't know how much you're actually there, but you can see people that they are majority up. Something of what we're just talking about. People want their pleasure, so they will go out to defend these things. And that's where I'm kind of going is, how do we actually change people's way of thinking? Because as you and I both know, every action starts with a thought. So how do you change the thoughts to bring about the actions of a better world?
Okay, that's very simple, Kirk. That's a very simple question. I'll answer in a technical way, just as a specialist that I am. And, you make me smile when you ask me questions like this. I love this type of question. This is great, this is exactly what I wish to hear. What you do is you work against the system of violence according to the priorities that are set by science. You do not just act as you think you should. You do not just act out of what you like to do. You please keep to the priorities that the specialists set up. I am that specialist, and I am telling you the priorities now. The first thing that I want you to do, and I want everybody to do exactly the same all over the planet at once. I want to start this now. I want every listener to start tomorrow acting exactly on what I'm going to tell. And this is, we have a system of violence that is structured by biological biases and by cultural biases. The biological biases, we have discussed them in the past radio shows, Kirk, were epigenetics, right? And the cultural biases are the memes, which is all the recorded attitudes of humankind when it comes down to violence. So whenever violence is part of our life, what do human beings do? That's the memes and that's the cultural bias. Okay, these two biases combined bring out all the behavioral patterns which lead into violence in the first place. And then we have a picture in which we have life, and in this life, a high percentage of human attitudes and behaviors is designed and made to suit the system of violence. Why? Because, as I have explained, the system of violence regulates the overall of all human complexity. So when we decide that we want to stop this being the rule and that we want to stop the system of violence running our lives, then we have to do it on both levels, the biological and the cultural. Regarding the biological, this means that we have to take care of the epigenetics and do what we need to do to be resilient, because when we change our attitudes and when we start working on any problem of violence in our immediate surrounding, we have to count that the system of violence will try to hit back. So in the same way, we progress and we change attitudes and we tackle the system of violence. In the same way, the system of violence will attack us back. And for this, we have to make ourselves strong. Kirk, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, good. So this means that
I'm sorry, I just muted my mic.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. So what we have to do is to make ourselves strong by having very close relatives, so people in the family and friends, which simply will be informed. They will not be asked. They will be informed about our change in attitude. And we will tell them very simply, because that's what we do over here, that we will need 4 times a day a hug. We need just, closeness. We just need support. And we need that anybody of our environment takes us in his arms for 40 seconds, 4 times a day. So it's 160 seconds that I want somebody to hug me per day. And we will do this on a regular basis so that we feel that we have the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the mind support of the people surrounding us and saying, okay, if you go, we are with you. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we will then attack the system of violence by targeting any person, because it's not relevant who we do this to, and it's not relevant which way we do it. What counts is that it goes out. And this is why I say I want it to happen immediately. From the moment on we finish this radio session, I want the people to go out and to just start it. And this means, first talk to your families, but then tomorrow go. And where you find that somebody has raped somebody and he's not punished, and where you find that somebody has abused sexually somebody and he's not punished, you start acting discreetly but thoroughly, so that this person, has no chance to avoid the issue. It's not that you want revenge. You do not want the system of violence to go on, to perpetrate itself again through revenge. That's not what you want. You want the system of violence to stop. So when you know about these things, you go in and act. And if we do it all at once, all over the planet, that will be noticed, because the people who are in power, and the people who have the power, for example, to drive us into an economical crisis, depend on other people who are covering up exactly these crimes. And the easiest way we bring them to fall is by cracking their system. They are real physical enemies. It's people carrying out a mission. Their mission is to drive us further into the system of violence for the benefit of those driving the system of violence. And this is very personal. So what we do is we do simply not react on what they present us. We don't give a shit. We don't mind about what they say. We just know which is the priority. The priority is, according to medical doctors, that the highest trauma that can be caused to any single human being on the planet is beyond, in example, a heart stroke, so a heart attack which would kill you immediately. So second to this kind of trauma come three types of trauma, which is rape, sexual abuse, concentration camp, and torture. So these kind of trauma are the highest level trauma that a medical doctor faces in any case. And this is exactly what we're doing. We are just saying, okay, what is the highest trauma? And which is the most common? Which is the most expanded trauma? And we just go
Andrés,
after.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm going to ask you to repeat the majority of what you just got through saying. I think you said there was three that were the highest, and it seemed like we were having some problems with our transmission here. So can you repeat that again, please?
Yes. So the highest trauma that can be caused to any human being is obviously a heart strike. So, for example, when you have a heart attack and you're close to dying. So medical doctors will always say, okay, this is where we have to intervene first. Yeah, this type of trauma, which is close to death. Yeah. Then the second highest trauma is rape, torture, sexual abuse, concentration camp, incarceration. These are, so a medical doctor, when he has a pyramid of priorities on what he has to act upon in the case of a catastrophe, has as first priority those which are closest to death, and second, this trauma. So it's rape and child abuse, for example, is in trauma categories the second highest after near-death traumatic experiences. And this means that as sexual abuse and rape is also the most common crime on earth, it's the most common violence, and it's the one which has the long-term consequences, because if a woman gets raped, the children will have the epigenetic damage for 5 generations. Yeah, so as this kind of crime is the most important. What we do is we simply target exactly this kind of crime. And we just work on it, independently of what politics and independent of what the military tell. We just do not care. We do not see what they do and what they tell and, the way they try to divert our attention as relevant anymore. We just work against the system of violence. And if we want to stop breeding the system of violence and feeding the system of violence, what we need to do is to simply stop the root causes. And the root cause is certainly going to be, what is the most massive, most emblematic also form of violence on planet Earth. I'm going to stop the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is really what is important. It's that we set the priorities and we do not allow anybody to divert attention. Kirk.
Yes.
This means
okay. Go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
end of the rope. It's the end of the rope for those who think that they can divert attention of our work and divert attention of what really needs to be done. Yeah. What needs to be done is to stop the entire system of violence, and for that we have to attack according to qualified priorities of the people working in the field. And it's not paying attention to the problems that they're putting in front of us. I mean, this is what they are used to do. And this is what enables them to just go on playing their dirty games in the background. And this is what we are not allowing anymore. We're saying, no, you're going to stop your dirty games in the background. And then all the other stuff will stop on its own. We will not even have to talk about it.
You bring me to another question. I wrote this, so I think you've answered part of it, but I would, if you will, elaborate on this one, because, before I get into the question, I just want to say to our listening audience, in about 25 minutes, a little bit less after our break, Andreas will be taking calls. I know this is kind of a weird time for the United States. Most people are probably at work or doing something else. But if you're in Europe and you want to call in, the number, you can call in by Skype. Just go to the Blog Talk Radio link, and you'll see a Skype button there. You can click on that and call in. If you'd like to call from the American number, it is area code 347-677-0812. Again, that number is 347-677-0812. We'll be taking calls after our hour break, which comes up in roughly 23 minutes, give or take. But now, let's get back to this question, because the question I want to ask you is here. Actually, there's more than one question. I've got a bunch of them here, so maybe I'll throw them all out at one time. Are we prisoners on this planet, unable to get along? Because you're saying go out and hug people. Well, here in Mexico, I know you're in Germany, but down here in Mexico, this is how we greet each other. You greet each other with a hug. You greet each other with women with a little kiss on the cheek, or you just press your cheek to their cheek, and it's a hello. We do this when we go goodbye, and there's never a lack of that close personal communication, if you will, between friends and just people you even know or don't know. Once you get to know a person the first time, second time you see him, you give him a hug. That's something that we do down here, but it kind of seems like, as you're talking about our distractions and how people have made this into essentially a prison planet, and people are always being controlled, or we are being controlled by what the media tells us, but the media are owned by corporations, and who owns corporations, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, exactly.
It's how can we actually get ourselves to get away from all of that? And that's the biggest problem, at least in my opinion, is getting people to see that, hey, we are being controlled and we're being distracted by flights that go here and they crash into the ocean, or Ebola popped up and then it just disappeared, and all the other distractions that come along. And what was going on while we were being distracted over here?
Well, the answer again, Kirk, and I'm really happy that you put all these questions across, because they are really nice questions, very useful. And I agree with you, it's the best way to bring out the technical language. And again, here comes systems theory applied to reality, and it's very simple. It's an issue of critical masses. There are critical masses of crimes that are being put out, and these critical masses of crimes only work because there is a critical amount of people supporting them. And this critical amount of people supporting them is born. It's born and bred. They are bred. It's children that need to be born. But in the first place, they are children who should be innocent and should have an innocent life and should have an innocent start. They don't get it because they are born out of the sequels of trauma. So once you're born without empathy and you're born out of the sequels of trauma, it's easy. It's very easy to direct you wherever the others want. And the others know it. I mean, rape is a weapon that is being used in any armed conflict around the planet. And it's been like that since humanity exists. There are historical recordings of massive rapes and kidnapping of women, in ancient Greek traditions, in ancient Greek history, or in the Roman history, which very simply show that it has always been known that this is the most efficient way of having any population subjugated, so docile, a population that is willing to do what you will tell the population to do, because you have weakened that population in the first step through rape, in the second step because the children born out of these rape and sexual abuse phenomena are children that are extremely weakened. So, again, the same answer as before. This is a technical issue. Please do not have an opinion. I'm not interested in hearing a personal opinion of anybody on this planet. We have medical indicators, and the medical indicators are very clear. We do not have to question that. There is things like, for example, we know that we are going to breathe so and so many times per day. Our heart is going to beat so and so many times per minute. We know that, and we know that if our heart does not do it, we have a problem. So we know that, our blood has to flow under a certain pressure, and, this is something that is normal. We also know that we cannot survive at a environmental temperature of minus 40 degrees or plus 50 degrees. We need a temperature in which we can move, which means that we are only resilient and capable of living in a critical amount of ranges of temperatures. So regarding violence, it's exactly the same. If we have a critical amount of violence occurring in everyday life, and we have this through sexual abuse and rape all over the planet. So if we have that, it's obvious that we will have a critical amount of people who will be weakened, that this weakness will express itself on the epigenetical level, so this will result in attitudes and behaviors who will add to the predisposition of those playing and knowing these things to use the weakened people for their own purposes. People can only be used if they are destroyed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, we know this from all the experiments the Nazis have done with the Jews in the concentration camps.
And
the only
Let
thing
me
that,
ask you Just go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll ask the question. Go ahead.
Okay, so what happened in the concentration camps was that it was a massive operation in which, for example, the Nazis would deprive the Jews of their sleep, having them standing up every 2 hours in the middle of the night, so they would not get their deep phases of sleep. And this is something that you do to a population that you want to drive into the crematorium, that you want to burn either alive or dead, you don't mind in the end. You just put them on the belt and you drive them in. And, this kind of attitude is what the people who are thinking all this evil through, because, it's people who have a certain type of intelligence, and they are used to do it because they also inherit epigenetics, and they inherit the epigenetics of the ones doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So they are trained for centuries, some of them. It's like the house of a lord and of a king, and its dynasty. It's inheriting not just the power, the wealth, and the reputation, and all the, which we call cultural biases. So it's not only inheriting the memes, but it's also inheriting epigenetics. Mm-hmm. And it's inheriting the skills of playing and dealing with the system of violence.
You brought up something else that I wasn't even thinking about, but you're talking about, I don't remember who I had this conversation with. It could have even been you some time ago, but talking about how the Nazis during World War II could actually go out and do these heinous things to people, not just only the Jews, because they captured more than just Jews, but how they could do these heinous things to people and go home and hug and kiss their wives and their children and play with them, and then turn around and do the same heinous things again the next day. But the question I really want to ask is, we also know from World War II, when Russia entered Germany, they went through a kind of, to use the word system, but they went through a system of just raping all the German women that they could come across. Mm-hmm. There has been many children from that. So how is that affecting Germany as a country, and possibly even Poland, is that for that fact?
Well, that's a perfect question again, Kirk. This conversation is really interesting because, it's bringing out really the root code of evil. Yeah, I love it. I love the question. I love the way you put it, because it really shows that you've thought it through, that you're coming close to the root cause, and that you're not allowing it to slip away anymore. No. That's exactly the point. I am working here in Germany now since the age of 18, so this was 1982. Since 1982, I'm working on these issues. I first worked as an artist, as an activist, as a peace activist, and I was not yet focused on the issues of rape and sexual abuse because I had not understood at that time that they were the main focus. But I understood this then just 3 years later, in 1985, when I first had an experience seeing a freshly raped woman in Germany and seeing, how people behaved around her. You had a victim in the street. This victim needed help. And you could see the attitudes and behaviors of the people around her. And this is what really, set all my alarms at fire. From that moment on, I saw that something really deep, really disturbing was going on. And in Germany, this problem is a problem that, for example, is being treated in the homes for elderly people. Because, elderly women have huge problems with this kind of traumatic experience coming up now while they are being put away. They are living in special homes where they get, sometimes they have no family anymore, so they are left alone, and the only person they see is the nurses, and the nurses do not have the time. They, in fact, need to have to talk to them, and they develop attitudes and behaviors which are really heavy to take, they are not able to retain their pee, or, they just shit in bed, and, they regress to small children, really. And it's very hard with them, yeah. So the problem in Germany is there. And if I tell you that politicians drive me into a situation asking me to intervene and to start working somewhere and do not open up the box of Pandora until I have had the meeting and I have said, okay, I'm doing it, then it also is a typical structure, because they know how deep the problem is, and they know that I could refuse and I could stop doing my work, even that I could get frightened maybe. That's what they fear. So they do not come up straight up to me and tell me, Andrés, this is the real problem. Do you want to have a look at it before you have the talks? No, they say, Andrés, come in, let's have the talks. You say, okay, I'll do it. And then they open up. I don't mind. I'm used to it. And I've been driven in so many situations in my life where I had to face this kind of problem that I don't mind anymore. But this shows how deep the problem is, and if we are facing exactly this kind of structure in the land of Sachsen, and it's probably the same for all of Germany, and we also see how the other side is trying to, stop me working at any possible turn, until the German government says, no, Andrés, we're going to do it, yeah? But it has taken also the German government representatives to say so. It has taken 10 years. And maybe, the only reason why they're doing it now is that they see that I will start teaching at the Catholic University of the city of Münster next month, that my book is about to come out in German language, so everybody will be able to read the book in Germany, and then stopping me doing the work is not really coherent. It's like it's too much. You can't stop it anymore. There is too much drive behind it. There is too many people giving support. There is too many institutions saying, we want this solution and not another one.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what makes the difference. Yeah. So the problem in Germany is exactly as you state, Kirk, that we also have the sequels still of the Second World War. And, if we want to stop any major war in the future, what we have to work on is on making that war impossible, because we have strong citizens. And strong and healthy citizens can only be where rape, sexual abuse, and all these highly traumatic experiences drop below a critical level. And the critical level is for the entire planet the same, without exception. On the entire planet, rape and sexual abuse have to drop below 30%.
Then where are we now?
65. That's what we assume.
You have to drop at least half.
Yeah.
That's going to be, it's not impossible. I know things. No, I don't believe there are things that are impossible. I think there's things that are improbable, but this is not impossible. So, within the next 5 minutes before we take a break here, just a 2-minute break for our break, so we can go do whatever we have to do. Let me ask you a question that you may want to continue after we come back from our break. But considering the financial crisis that's going on, and it's leading to a possible war, we've been kind of shuffling information back and forth about that just in this last week.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see? Yeah. Can you tell us the difference between what is considered and is circulating as conspiracy theory, and what is fact, and what you can tell us from your information from working in NATO and working with government officials? Okay.
What I can tell you there is that the situation is really absurd. I mean, there is more and more citizens on the planet informed, knowing that the financial system, the way it is set up, cannot function, because the amount of debt that is being created to serve the interest rates of those having money and lending and borrowing the money is so absurd that it is completely nonsensical. It just is completely ridiculous. It's completely out of proportion, and it has no meaning anymore. There is no meaning behind it. And the most interesting thing then is, for example, to see that the children in these families, like the grandson of Johnson & Johnson, for example, make films and very clearly state that they do not want to inherit the fortunes. They simply do not want the money anymore. And then you have people, who are displayed by media like being great philanthropists. And in the end, it's not that they are philanthropists, it's that their children and children's children simply refuse to take on the burden. They say, do what you want with your money. We don't want it. So this is something very curious, isn't it? I mean, it shows clearly that there is a change in spirit, there is a change in mind, and that not everybody is willing to just let this slip anymore and happen anymore. So everybody on the entire planet, be it the IMF, be it any central bank of any country, be it the Central Bank of Europe, the EZB, they all know that they're playing poker. And what they're waiting for is for the time in which global civil society, and this is us, it's you, Kirk, it's me, it's all the people that are working on these issues right now, because we're obviously not naive, we are not stupid, we are not letting these things slip, we are looking at these issues, we are creating coalitions of alternative grid-based economies. And these grid-based economies are sharing economies. And these sharing economies have a completely different character compared to the patriarchal economies that we know coming from banks and from the big money borrowers and lenders.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
On top of that, we have the alternative powers. The BRICS, for example, which is all the states which are simply refusing to deal with the currency of the dollar and invent another currency. Say, okay, we're going to make our deals in that currency right now. And, so it just weakens the position of those who have been in power until now. But that is not as positive, because we do not know what is going to happen with these people. I mean, they may be as frenzy about power and domination as the others, and maybe even worse. And we don't want that to happen either.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Just before we go on break, let me make this comment. You're talking about people that don't want to inherit the family fortunes and the responsibilities that goes along with it. I've often asked that you're talking about people like Johnson & Johnson and all these other corporations, and they're all traded on stock exchanges, and people want to buy their stock. But to keep a corporation going, the corporations oftentimes will tell everyone, and this is one thing that even Warren Buffett says, is that what I want you to do is to keep our investors happy. Well, how do you keep investors happy? You have to keep making a profit. And how do you keep making a profit? You have to keep doing what you're doing, whether it's raping the land or vegetation, whatever it is, polluting the air, and it has to continue because people that invested, they want their money back plus. So anyhow, let's go for our break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes, so stay tuned, and when we come back, we'll be taking calls for you to converse with Andrés Ginestet in Germany as soon as we get back. So please stay tuned.
freedomtalkradio.co.uk. This is the most diverse,
most amazing,
one of the funniest radio stations you could ever listen to
off the internet.
I've heard so much stuff from the ups, the downs, the lefts, the rights,
the politics, the non-politics, the schmolitics, whatever you want to call them.
It's great.
Hi, this is Duke Mayo Rockefeller. Please check out my humanitarian organization, www.livechildlive.org. You are listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with our esteemed radio host, Kirk Spencer.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We'll return to today's program shortly. Keep up with what's new at K-Wave 6 Radio by visiting our website at www.kwave6, that's the number 6, radio.tk. You can subscribe to our blog via the RSS feed button on our blog page titled What's New, or via the social media links in the website. If you missed any of our shows, you can find all of our shows archived in our YouTube channel. The link to our YouTube channel is on the homepage of our website. We also suggest that you check out the programming at Freedom Talk Radio by visiting their website at www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk. Now let's return to today's show.
Hi there. This is Chad C. Meek, writer and executive producer of the epic UFO thriller Giant Rock the Movie. Even if you haven't been abducted by E.T., you need to listen to the K-Wave 6 Radio Network to get the latest of the odd, the unusual, or more importantly, the fun. See you at the movies.
Hello and welcome back to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is, if you haven't heard already, is Andrés Ginestet, and he is calling us from Germany, and hopefully that hissing means that he's still there or not dropped away. Are you still there, Andrés? Okay, well, beautiful. Okay. We're going to take calls. If you're online, you're hearing us. Hopefully you'll hear us live. We also appreciate it if you hear the show when it's archived. But anyhow, if you're going to call in, the number in the U.S. and Canada is 347-677-0812. That's again 347-677-0812. Or you can call us in by Skype by clicking the Skype icon on the Blog Talk Radio page and follow the prompts to get you into the show. Now, as we were talking about before we took the break, we're talking about, let's see. Can you tell us the difference between what's circulating as conspiracy theory and what is fact? And what can you tell us from working with NATO and all the government officials that you do work with?
Yeah, again, so, the what we were discussing then is that, again, this is a scenario in which the existing players of the global system of violence are trying to divert our attention of what really would threaten their existence. Putting again economic conflicts ahead of us is very easy because it's something that if we are weakened and if we're afraid of losing money and power because we have been weakened on the epigenetic level, so we feel weaker, we do not have sufficient empathy, and as we do not have sufficient empathy, any loss on the material side could worsen our situation, because if we do not have empathy, we count on power. So if we count on power, we need anything that will reinforce the feeling of power. And this means that we are depending on the economy. So if they attack the symptom of our real source of trouble, because the internal loss of empathy is what is causing the trouble. But by attacking the economy, they attack, in fact, what we still hope to have a little bit of power on, so which would help us survive. So the way they are doing it is very simple. They do divert our attention by just putting a carrot in front of our nose and hoping that we will follow the carrot like a donkey. And this is what we are mostly doing. And we simply do not have to fall for this very simple trap. We have to keep working steady on the priorities, and we are the ones setting the priorities. It's not them. If they think that making trouble on the economical level is going to help them, let them do it. And then you were talking about it, Kirk, stating that, well, corporations are depending on the profits because that's the way to keep investors happy. You know, what we will do is by changing the memes, the cultural biases, we will keep the investors happy because they're going to be hugged 4 times a day. They're going to be full of empathy. They're going to see happy people around them being empathic, strategically empathic. And this means that the people will notice that all the other stuff is not important anymore. What we have to make is this shift, you know, from one problem to the real problem. So the visible problem is the economic problem. But the problem that is structuring and building up the economic problem is an empathy problem. So if we treat the source, if we treat the empathy problem, and we have to do it massively, then the other problem will go away on its own. We do not even need to talk about it. You know, it just will disappear because people who are empathic towards each other care for each other, and then all the greediness just goes away. But this depends on the critical mass of people who have a critical mass of empathy. And there is no other way to stop it.
I'm actually smiling over here because you're beginning to sound a lot like me. All right. Let's bring this into a discussion because I've been asking questions because I give the floor. You know, as a host of a show, I believe that I should be asking you questions and letting you speak. The reason why you're here is because you're the expert in this field. So, yes, I give that to you. But let's move this to a discussion here because it sounds like you and I are on pretty much the same page, but I'm going to put it my way. What I tell people is here, and I've been doing this for many, many years, I've taught metaphysics, and the main thing that I tell people, even to this day, is, I'll give you an example. Back in December, I ran across an old friend. She's about 30 years old. She's never been married. She wants to get married. She has college education, university education. She's in a family where they own several businesses, but it's not what she wants to do. Now, she's not on the same level, and her family's not on the same level by any means of being like the Johnson & Johnson dynasty and all the rest of that. But, you know, for the area that we live in, they're not wanting for anything. They all get out and work and do their thing. So here's the thing. She asked me, she goes, I just really feel lost. And I said, why? And she goes, I don't have a husband, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have the job that I want, I'm not doing the things that I really want to do. So I asked her, I said, so what do you want to do? And she says, well, that's the problem. I don't know what I want to do. And I said, because you know what. If you really want to be happy, set your mind to goals, not to people. So how do you see or respond to that?
Well, again, you know, I'm so happy to have you, you know, doing the interview and asking these questions because, again, you know, there is a very technical answer to it. I'm just a professional, Kirk. I go ahead in a professional way, you know. I'm not interested in personal opinions. I just do what needs to be done. That's it. And what I do is I have a list of targets. And the first list, says that we have to work on the highest priorities of the violence problem. I don't ask about what I would like to do because, I'm an artist and I obviously would like to spend 16 hours a day in my colors, on my papers, on my canvases, playing with clay. I mean, this is what I would like to do, but I don't ask for it. I don't do it. I just do what is necessary to do. I want a future for my children. I want a planet that is worth living. So if I want a planet that is worth living, and I have 3 children. My daughter was born on the 19th of January. So, I have real reasons to do what I am doing. Then what I want is a happy planet. So if I have to lower the ratio of trauma on the planet, then that is my first duty. Full stop. I would never allow myself to ask or to think about what I wish to do. If you want at some point to do what you wish to do, make sure that there is going to be a planet there that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's focus. If we do this work, all of us, for 5 years, in a steady way, this planet would change so rapidly, life on this planet would change so rapidly, that there would be no need for bothering anymore, and I could go back to painting. My problem is that I'm doing this work alone, since the tender age of 14, that I'm working my way through, and that I am not representative of human population. That's the problem. The problem is that I am not critical masses. Critical masses is the people listening. Critical masses is the people out there. And it's not me who has to do it, it's all of us. I am doing it anyway. So please, I just ask other people to do not think about what you want to do. Make sure that you will able to do what you want to do when time has come. It's not the time. We live in circumstances, all of us. This planet is our rocket in a huge universe. Yeah, it's a spaceship. We are all living on this spaceship. We are not ready to leave this planet Earth and to move elsewhere. So we have to accommodate on this planet. So what?
Yeah, I oftentimes say, if the universe were to let us out of this planet and we were to take what we are right now, I think we would be slapped down. We would say it in the United States. We'd be bitch slapped right back into our place. It's like, get down, get away. You are polluting. You're not enhancing anything.
Yeah, that's it. So,
it also takes me to the point, I'm sorry, let me just finish this quick thought. It also takes me to the point of thinking that, as I said it before, it takes us from a paradise and puts us into a prison because we're allowing, you're saying it in a slightly different way, but I'm saying we're allowing ourselves to be, quote, quote, governed into a particular pattern where only the people that know what's going on, that are in control, are saying, that's the way I want it, and we're going, okay. This is where I'm coming up with saying, what do you want? Do you want peace? Do you want love? If that's what you want, stop focusing. That's my way of putting it, and this is conversational point. Stop focusing on what is wrong with everything and start focusing on what do you really want in life. Do you want peace, love, happiness? That's what you need to focus on. That's where the hugging comes in. That's where the genuine hugging comes in and says, yes, I do appreciate you, or as the word it usually goes around in metaphysical circles, namaste. It is, I celebrate, I acknowledge and celebrate the spiritual being that is within you, genuinely, not on a superficial basis.
Yeah, good. I think, in fact, we could sum it up. I mean, for me, it is very simple. As you see, I have just a technical answer to any question you put across. I'm happy when I can do, as I say, I was born as an artist, and certainly my art is what fulfills me most. But right now, I have other duties. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it's very simple. I work a little bit like a soldier, Kurt. Yeah, I have my orders given. The orders are being given not by people, because I am the commander. Let's say the first commander. I'm the one, giving the orders myself. But the orders come from reality. Yeah, I have a planet. I can see this planet. I can see the problems on the planet. And I just act accordingly. It would be stupid if I just ignored reality and behaved like on cloud 7, on a pink cloud, dreaming myself away. No, sorry, that's not going to happen. It's very simple.
Yeah. Right. Now, I think we're coming across in the same way. I think it's just coming from two different angles, or if you want to say, we have a candle, you're coming from one end, I'm coming from the other, but we're actually on the same candle coming towards the center about how to make things happen. But that's the part of the discussion that I enjoy. Just in case if there's anybody listening out there, I know that in the United States most people are working. I know here in Mexico everybody's working. But if you have the ability, you'd love to call in, please do give us a call at area code 347-677-0812. If you want to call in by Skype, just go to the Blog Talk Radio page. If you're listening to, for instance, from my blog, just go to the link and click on the Skype icon, follow the prompts to get into the show, and you can talk directly here with Andrés Ginestet. Anyhow, getting back to our conversation, I think I've run out of my questions here, but Andrés, do you have anything else that you would like to tell us? Because we've kind of summed up a lot of stuff, but what do you see you can go here, or if you have something else you want to talk about, that's fine. What do you have that you can tell us about your time spent with NATO, things that we should know?
Well, what I can tell you is that what we discuss at NATO is very close and very similar to what I'm describing here on radio. So when I talk to the people, in the informal conversations, we have the formal conversations and then we have the informal conversations. I'm discussing exactly the same issues. It's just being professional and saying, okay, what is NATO mission? NATO mission is to keep peace on planet Earth. That's what it's about. And as long as the system of violence is the system ruling, it has to be done according to the rules of the system of violence. So it will depend, very simply, on the proportion of people who understand that we are all together, commonly facing the system of violence. It will depend on this type of understanding whether we can shift from a system of violence strategy to a different strategy. Very simply. So the entire global risk of nuclear warfare, of a fourth world war, because the third world war will always be in history the Cold War. And the Cold War had more victims than the Second World War. So a fourth world war in nuclear terms, which would be a giant war. And according to Albert Einstein, the war after this war will be a war that is carried out with stones and sticks because nothing else will be left. So if we do not want this to happen, our only way, and I say it's really very simple, it's a very simple message. Get it? Yeah? Humanity, as entire humanity, has a single enemy, only one. It's the system of violence, with all its priorities, with all its technical implications. And this means that if we want to avoid a nuclear World War IV, we have to get a critical mass of people working on the necessary issues. And again, I'm going to say, do what you want. Everybody out there, Just do what you like. Do what you want. I don't care. I know what I'm doing. I'm doing it for 30 years and longer. I will go on doing it. It's an issue that needs steadiness, that needs perseverance, that needs calm, that needs the ability of negotiation. So it needs diplomacy, it needs rhetorics, it needs a very extremely stubborn will. We have to have a very strong, stubborn mind. But I will go on doing it, and I just invite everybody out there. I hope that people are listening, and I hope that those listening just see that there is not much to be discussed about. Yeah, maybe somebody has technical questions. Then please jump into the radio show and ask your questions. We will find, within seconds, we will find a technical answer. The technical answer will not necessarily be what you want to listen to. And there is certainly people out there who are thinking this is a show of freaks. It's people who do not know a thing. They are discussing rubbish. They are discussing things that are not really the problem. Sorry. But I'm the expert. I'm the one sitting at NATO. I'm the one designing complexity architecture, and whether you like it or not, the future will depend on these designs and nothing else. So everybody's invited to become a complexity architect and to decide which complexity curves humanity is about to take. Everybody is invited in participating in this process, but be clear, the priorities are not depending on personal wishes. The priorities are very clear set. NATO says, as long as the rule prevails, established by the system of violence, we will act according to the rules of the system of violence. And this is very normal. Kirk, I don't know what you think about this, but, it's like, what shall we discuss there? It all depends on the people out there who are listening. It doesn't depend on us.
Well, that's true, because we are doing our own work here in our own areas, which is actually, I had someone that invited to be part of our show, but she sent me a message this morning, and quote, she says, I am sicker than sick, so she wouldn't be able to make the radio show today. She's also an international journalist, so that was going to be interesting, and she's working on her doctorate degree in, let me see if I've got this correct, behavioral sciences, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. So she would have been an excellent person to have in on the show, but she said she couldn't attend, but another time. I do have a question here, listening to what you're saying, and I know this for a fact because, my history, my background is in psychology. So, anyhow, how do you, because I'm the host and you're the guest, how do you see, or how do you get people to step out of their fear, if you understand what I mean by that? Because people, they don't, many people don't even know that they're governed by fear. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of getting a ticket. I'm afraid of getting stopped by the police. I'm afraid of in the United States, the IRS, the Treasury Department, whatever. I'm afraid, but they always want to come across like, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I can control my life. But how do we actually first face our fears, and then how do we step out of them to accomplish the goals of having a world where, as you say, I want my children to have a world that's better than what I've got right now?
Kirk, again, I love it. I love your questions, and I love, because it's going to be a technical answer. Very simple. Go out in the street and hack somebody. Just ask anybody in the street if you may have a hug. And hack that person for 40 seconds and say thank you. and then go on. And then go on. You do not have to share your worries and your problems with everybody. But you can hug anybody. You just can do it. So the point is that, if you have a problem and this problem has a specific reason, like, for example, the problem is with family members, the problem is in your business, the problem is in any state organization. You never know. It could be a mix-up of problems. Okay, fine. But work on it in a structured way. And if you want to feel less fear, then get trust, get empathy. So hug people in the street. Hug anybody that is in front of you. It's not going to be that easy. I know it. But, sometimes you just need to be in the street and you see somebody smile at you. That's easy. That's easy. It doesn't even need words. You just can do it.
No, I totally agree. I'm sorry, I was coughing over here. Nice having a mute button in my microphone. Anyhow, my father, when I was a kid, now I'm older than you, so this goes back way, way, way back when, but my father had a habit, and I learned this habit just from watching him. And when my children were small, because now I'm a grandfather, when my children were small, they used to ask me all the time, get to what my father did and what I picked up from him in just a moment, but my kids used to ask me, Daddy, isn't there anybody that you don't know? What my father did, and what I picked up, was he went someplace, and I thought he knew, just like my children thought of me. I thought that he knew everybody. He didn't know these people. What he did was he would talk to strangers. Didn't matter who they were. Didn't matter what race, what background. He didn't ask for religion. Didn't matter. He would talk to people and just make people feel comfortable. Because you were just saying, you can bring a smile to somebody's face. There is a video that used to be, I don't know if it's still there, but on YouTube, pretty much everything will stay there unless it's offensive. And this is definitely not offensive. But there was this point where it started out where it was, I think it was a meeting in a corporate office, and the speaker was telling people to reach out, to talk to people, to, in essence, using my own word, bearing your soul to somebody. And this guy, he left his office. He's the atypical, as far as what the media shows out, is being one of those stuffed shirt people working in a corporate office, in a glass office, and all that kind of stuff. And he went home and he noticed that his son was being belligerent as usual, but that's just because his father never listened to him. And he started thinking about what was covered in the meeting that he was in. And he went and he spoke to his son. And after the conversation, his son was relaxed and whatnot. And he says, Dad, wait a minute. And he went upstairs to his bedroom and came back down and handed his father a note. His father opened the note and saw that it was a suicide note, that his son was about to commit suicide, but because his father opened up to his son, he decided, no, it's not worth it, because this is what I really wanted anyway, was communication with my dad, which would give me a better view of the world. And it just went on downhill. It was just with the other person and go, I acknowledge you. You acknowledge me. We live here together. Let's work on a, if you will, a better life for not only you and me, but for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a beautiful example, and it tells us straight away how strong, deaf ears can hurt persons. Like if you have a child that is about to suicide and wrote a note about a suicide, and you understand that something is going wrong and that you have to listen to your child and talk to your child, and then suddenly your child opens up and says, "Dad, you know that I was close to suicide. This is, a real dramatic situation." And maybe that father had the intuition that it was just in time that he did it, but he should have done it earlier, very simply. Anyway, it's still a nice end to a nightmare, because that son, probably just needed somebody to pay attention in a specific way. It's just an issue of quality. That is not an issue of time. A father can be more or less absent. A father can be more or less busy, as long as when he's there, he really cares about the children and has a really strong relationship to the children, then it's fine. It's no problem. So this is, as you state, it's a really nice example of a behavioral change and attitude, which is simple. It's just sitting down and talking to each other.
Yeah. Well, how about this other video that has been circulating around for a while and is still actually circulating? I haven't seen the other one I was just mentioning for some time now, but this one, it's someplace in the Orient, and I'm not sure, but I think it's Thailand. A guy walking down the street, and there's water pouring off of a roof. Evidently, it was just finished raining. And he sees the water pouring out on the sidewalk, and he puts a plant that was pretty much dried up and almost dead underneath the water. So the water gets into the plant, the dirt of the plant. And he goes to eat, and there's a dog that wants to eat. He's eating on a sidewalk, like a sidewalk cafe, and he feeds the dog. And then he's going by, I'm shortening the story, and then he sees a woman and a child that are basically sitting on the sidewalk begging for money, or as we would say, begging for alms. And he goes into his wallet and he gives the majority of his money to this woman and the child. Making the longer story short, he does this repeatedly, and on top of giving bananas to one of his next door neighbors in the apartment building that he lives in, he does this from the goodness of his heart. He's not doing it for the expectation of getting anything in return. But later on, you see that the plant has grown, the dog is being friendly to him and protecting him, whatever. And he goes by to see the daughter because it's on his route wherever he travels. And the woman is sitting there, but the daughter isn't, and he kind of looks at her because it's basically just nothing but music in the background. There's no vocalization to this whole video. And he gives the woman a look like, "Where's your daughter?" And she comes walking down the sidewalk, and she is in a school uniform. In other words, with the money that he gave was enough for her to go to school to better her life. And it's just a very heartwarming video. In other words, as my friend that I was telling you about this, working on her doctorates, as she would say, you start at your home, you start in your community, and then you go citywide, statewide, nationwide, and worldwide. But you have to start someplace, and this is what that video was all about, was start here in your own neighborhood, and it will expand and go out and out and out. So the fear that I would for papers or do a radio show or TV show, if that's what you can do it. But just start in your own home and your own community and make it work from there. Okay,
I agree with it, Kurt. Except that again, I will have a critical and professional perspective on it and say, first, see that the grit of empathic people gets strong. Do not do it with everybody. See that you do it with those that have empathy first. Because the empathic group has to grow. And it has to grow at the expenses of the non-empathic group. Okay? So in technical terms, we have to make distinctions. in the future, it will be easier maybe to make distinctions because, if we manage to do, for example, a planetary trauma mapping, and then we know exactly how many people have trauma where, and then we go on researching and we know where is resilience, and we know exactly where are the people who have most resilience, then we can do it even in a more technical way. But we have to make sure that we do not invest on the wrong side. A person that is not empathic and that is driven by the bias of fight or flee. So a person that is biased and her entire attitude and behavior will be depending on fight or flee is not worth a single investment, but a technical investment that only can come from the people surrounding that person. So we have to know our targets. We have to know which person is dominated by the system of violence, and we have to know how many people we have in our team to bring that person out. So it's team building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something, that you do generally. You focus.
Uh-huh. No, I don't disagree with you at all. Nothing that's said there I disagree with. So I just you have a more, how should we say, planned approach to how you would like to see it done.
Exactly.
Yeah, and well, let me ask you this. I don't mind putting myself in the hot seat. So, how do you see, even where I'm coming from, how do you see that in the approach that you're talking about?
Okay, if we look at Mexico, we have there a very clear problem, which is also again prostitution, which is also again rape, and which is also then drug cartels, which are building upon the substance that is there. Yeah, I mean, the drug cartels are working with people, and these people are the weakest people. It's people who know that when they have to die and that they're going to be cut into pieces, do not oppose resistance. So it's extremely weak people. We know it from all the narrations, over here in Europe. We have many times visiting criminologists who come from Mexico and who explain how the drug cartels work in Mexico. And it's experts. And, it's horrendous. The pictures they show, the stories they tell, it's really amazing. But I'm listening to it. It's not that I'm a stupid, blunt idiot who is not facing reality. Sorry, I am the first one listening to it. And I'm the first one looking at the pictures. And I'm the first one understanding the structures behind.
Mm-hmm.
So because I know it, because I meet the people, and because I'm fighting against these people, I will insist. Do exactly what I'm telling you. Do not do anything else. Do not, anybody be diverted, anybody, be misled into other priorities. Priority number one, don't, talk to the drug dealers. Talk to their children. Talk to their women. Get them first out. And then use them to work on the others. Do it secretly. Do not do it in the open. Do not be a good person. Be a soldier. Be a soldier and work strategically. You are at war with a system. So be not naive. Do not be open about it. Be secret and be dangerous.
All right, let me ask you this, because you just went into another question. Why be secretive? Why be covert, if you want to use that word? Why is that?
Because you need to protect yourself and your actions from the other side. You're not going to naively open up your side. You're not going to offer any weakness for others to attack. I mean, you have to be empathic towards yourself in the first place. If you want to be empathic to other people, you have to make sure that you will stay alive, that you will be healthy to do it. So first, care for yourself and the people that you grow with yourself into the strength of the empathy grid, the empathy network. But be aware that you're doing something in a strategic way. This is not an innocent saying. This is war. I'm talking with military people. And this is a war that I'm building up. I am the one telling that we are at war. But I have decided that the war that we are playing is a different war of the one which is being told in the media. I decided, and this was in 2008 when I came out with it, Kurt. In 2008, I declared war. I declared war upon the system of violence, and this is serious. I know something about military discipline, and I'm not afraid of using it.
No, that's quite obvious. No, what I was getting at, what I'm still getting at, is just for our listeners to understand. I'm not putting this on a personal basis, so you hope you understand that. It's an understanding for people who are listening to the show, whether it's live or archived later on. You're saying, in other words, being covert in your actions of, okay, let's put it this way. There's a lot of videos out there about people standing on sidewalks in public areas, whether it be a mall in a downtown area or a shopping mall someplace else, and they're putting up signs and saying free hugs or hug me, I'm a Muslim, and people are coming up and they're hugging. But how do you compare that kind of, let's say, battle tactic to doing? I understand, put it that way. I understand what you're talking about, going out and talking to people, because yes, there will be people following you to sabotage your action. So how do you see those people that are going out to the public and just saying, give me a hug, or putting up a sign and free hugs? How do you compare that to what you're talking about?
Well, that's very interesting because, they obviously do not harm anybody. They are doing some good. And it's good that these people turn up, but also they need protection. They need support. They need a community that is backing them so that if anything happens, they know that they will be taken care of and that they will, get the cure if they are traumatized or whatever, because it may happen. But generally speaking, when people are open-hearted and good, the options for any person in front of it to catch on that and to want it for herself and to do something about this wanting it for herself is stronger than the option of it being refused and disregarded. So it's not stupid if these people do it, having a support racket that will help them in case something happens. And there is no harm in doing it as a couple. Having, for example, one putting up the sign and then another person around the corner watching who comes along. Yeah.
Or videotaping it as they normally do.
Yeah, exactly. But that means that if somebody is videotaping it, then there is somebody around, isn't it? So it's not like that person is alone. So, and this is important. It's it's good to do it strategically. While I would also say it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim. Anybody can do it and should do it. And the issue is that what we have to do, and this is why I'm also, being very strict in technical terms, if we are at war with the system of violence, we are at war with the system of violence, any place, any time, any occasion. And we do, for example, not allow violence to use any religion, any faith, any spirituality to pretend being religion and then be something very different. Yeah? So any person, for example, who will say that Sharia law is good is to me not a religious person. It's a violent person, full stop. Sharia law cuts down the rights of women. And as I've said previously, in medical terms, any violence action that will hurt women and children is the worst that can be done to humanity. So I'm not going to accept any person who will smile at me and say, hello, I'm a kind person, but I think women have to dress up this way and are not allowed to drive a car, and etc., etc. This is a no-go. I have to very clearly know where I make the distinction.
Yes. No, I'm chuckling because I've said the same thing, just using my own words, and I tell people quite honestly and up front, I said, I look for consistency. And I'm one of those who, if you know those little picture games of, they put two pictures that are side by side, and they say, find the inconsistencies of these two pictures. I was one of those I still love to do them on occasion. I can find the inconsistencies usually within minutes, sometimes within seconds, depending on how blatant they are. But, yeah, I look for the consistencies. If you're saying you're a religion of peace, then why are we talking about killing? Why are you doing this or doing that? And it seems like your focus is on death and punishment, not on love and reward and brotherhood, if you will, etc.
Well, that's very simple, you know. I mean, if you are on the run of fight or flee, what you do is fight or flee. And as long as you feel empowered, you fight, and you just crush your opponents. It's very simple. I mean, if you have no empathy, your brain is not capable of doing anything else. That's all. And how can you bring empathy in again? Well, certainly not enslaving women and forcing them to forced sex, you know, like it's happening in Islamic State. Sorry, but I mean, I know that in fact what these men want is love, and they're not getting it, so they are, you know, doing it violently. But that's not the way. It's not going to help, not really. Yeah.
No. Yeah, violence begets violence. Let me ask you a question. This just came to mind, and it's something that I talk about here on rare occasions, though, but I still talk about it. Here in Mexico, well, I think you know this even from Spanish, there is te quiero, which is love for a brother, friend, your mother, so on and so forth, and then there's te amo, which is love for your wife, your husband, etc.
Yes.
In English, there's only I love you. That's it, just I love you. But in Greek, in the ancient Greek, there was agape, there's phileo, and there's eros. Eros, which pretty much says what it is, erotic love. Phileo, where we get the word Philadelphia in the United States, brotherly love. And then there's agape, which is the love of God or godly love. How can you explain that in the world that we're living in and just what we were just talking about?
Well, you know, that's wonderful because you are, you know, giving the explanation just by stating that in ancient Greek there was a distinction. So a plurality within vocabulary. In order to describe the phenomenon of love, you had three distinctions, which are precious distinctions. And these distinctions make our language rich. So if the distinction in English is not there, in fact, what we need to do is either invent the words and start using them, which will puzzle. Yeah, I mean, why not? You know, let's invent three words which will describe exactly, you know, what the Greek people were able to tell. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we have to do, because what we have to do is to get the detailed and sophisticated richness of the concepts of ancient Greek translated into everyday life in any Anglo-Saxon context.
Mm-hmm.
And you have also the same distinction in Spanish. You have te quiero, te amo, pero también te deseo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can also say that, for example, in English. You are a desirable love to me. I desire you. It's like that's more than loving in friendly terms or in family terms or in godly terms. So
erotic. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like it's not possible. We just have to care more for what we choose when we talk. We can express ourselves in very different ways. Every time somebody tells me I love you, I'm just about to ask, how do you mean that?
Yeah.
It's nice, but which kind of love is it that you're approaching me with?
Yes, indeed. Well, we're going to wrap up the show. We have about 7 minutes to do this. So I'm going to ask you first if you have any final words, but I also want to, if you're willing to do this, otherwise, if anybody wants to contact Andrés, you can contact him through the contact page on kwave6radio.tk, or Andrés, I know you have a website. Actually, you have more than one where I found some stuff about you. So how can people contact you if you're willing to do so, or do you just want them to contact you through me, through the radio show?
Well, the easiest way is really to go to the websites and just send an email. I'm being contacted on a daily basis by complete foreigners, so people who I have never met before and I don't know. And these people simply contact me because they want to work with me, that's all. I'm very interested in having as much people as possible working on all these issues and not asking questions, not discussing priorities, just doing what we want them to do. I'm not interested in discussing whether we shall first target another type of violence. No, we are going to do what doctors have told. If doctors tell that's the pyramid of priorities, then we will go by that pyramid and work our way down. And, if it takes 10 years, it's fine. If we can make it in 5, it's better. So it's just a matter of critical issues, of critical masses of people doing the right thing. And to me, this is behaving professionally and just targeting the system of violence as the entire system and declare war on that system. Do not declare war on people. Do not declare war on specific types of people, be it according to race, to ethnics, to gender, to sexual preferences. No, that's not what counts. What counts is that we face the system of violence in the way it is, abstract. It's an abstract system. So that's all. And, there is not much to be discussed about it. I mean, it's very clear because we can measure the trauma in the blood. We are going to do it anyway. There is no way out. It's like this trauma measuring will be done. I don't mind about how long it takes, but it will be done. We will have a diagnosis of all the planet. We will know which amount of trauma is where on the planet at some time. Nobody's going to be able to evade the issue. And it's, a battle that we only can win. We can't lose it. We cannot surrender to the system of violence. We simply cannot do it. So
no, not if you want a world for your children and grandchildren to live in that's better than the one we're in. No.
No, exactly. And it makes no sense to play with the system of violence either. Once you know that there is final methods to end it, I don't think that people are gonna say, okay, and why shouldn't I just go on playing for a little longer? It's so amusing. I got to visit this morning, as I told you earlier today, Kirk, from the priest from the Catholic Church, and he said, Andrés, you know what? it's so much fun to have the Russians and the Americans, fighting each other. I mean, you can make wonderful films out of it. That's the reason why they are not listening, not yet to you, and they are not, playing along and not defining the enemy as a common enemy, because it's boring. It's much more entertaining if we can hit each other, and that's it. It's children's games, I mean, this is exactly what we know. We just, need to see that we could maybe, if we become adults, responsible adults in our life, and that we change some patterns, okay, we will be allowed to play a game, different games this time. Yeah, it's not like we're gonna go out and rape 10,000 women in Kosovo again anymore. Yeah, that's not the kind of game we will. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's just about time that we mature to the point that we behave like adults, like responsible people. That's all. Yeah. It's very simple.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it. I had a different way of asking the question, which I'm not going to ask now because we already answered it. But the theme of it is still the same. There's so many of us that are looking at it as something that's entertainment. The news for many people is just entertainment. Oh, let's see what's going on in the world, and I can't do anything about that. Oh, the world's going down the drain. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Whatever. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, Andrés, we're going to end the show here fairly soon. So, would you like to come back in another 6 weeks?
I think we should do it, because what we haven't managed, Kirk, and we really need to manage that, is we need to get people discussing the issue in the open. I'm wondering if we are, I'm just trying to be as simple as possible. And I'm trying to do this also in a very clear and direct way. I just want people who are listening to understand that I'm not going to discuss priorities. I'm not going to discuss terms. I want people to do it. That's all. And I'm very straightforward. Yeah. And once this is clear, I just hope that people will turn up and want and wish to discuss the issues in a technical way. I'm very open to do some counseling in the open. For example, we do not need to discuss cases that are being lived through, but people can talk about past cases. They can discuss problems that they have on a theoretical level. We'll bring them up. Let's discuss them together. Let's see what is really the problem. Let's dismantle that problem and have people moving.
Yeah, we'll get to that, and we'll see if we can get you to do the show in the nighttime in the Americas. But we do have to go now. Thanks again, Andrés, for being here. Thanks for those who are listening, both live and in archive, and we'll see you again soon. Be well. Thank you for being a part of our listening audience. Be sure to keep up with our shows and our podcast via our blog, on Twitter, and in Facebook. All links, including our RSS feed, are available at kwave6radio.tk. That's kwave6, the number 6, radio.tk. All the best.